to Shar with Next with Shar, our series, then, oh, who knows what. But this time we are doing a short series, about 4 or 5, of meeting with people who are in the commercial real estate end of the business, talking to companies, talking to clients, talking to employees, seeing what's going on. Because we have had a pandemic, as we all know, that took people from sometimes maybe working from home to everybody scattering to work from home practically. And now we are trying to figure out, how do we come back? I mean, Zoom has made it possible so you can meet with your clients all over the world. You can meet with your teams, you can meet with your employees, your colleagues, but it isn't the same as real time, real face, which is something that I think a lot of us have come to realize is more important than we thought.
Yeah.
So now we're trying to figure out that model. What does that mean to reverse this? Is it going to be hybrid? Is it going to be 100%? And
Hmm.
how much do the employees have to say about all that? So I
Yeah.
decided it'd be interesting to talk to people who are in that industry. Tell me what you're hearing from your clients. So today I would like to introduce Ashley Ochiagha from
Oh,
Atmosphere Commercial Interiors. She'll tell us a little bit about what she does and a little bit about Atmosphere, and then we'll ask some questions and have a little back and forth about what she is seeing and experiencing and hearing.
absolutely. Thank you, Shar, for having me on today. Super excited to be chatting with you about what's next, since that has been the hot question on everybody's mind. I'm Ashley Ochiagha. I am Atmosphere's A&D consultant. And so basically, in a nutshell, it means that I am bilingual. I can speak design and dealer and kind of bring those visions together to make projects come to life. And I think especially in this era that we're in, design and interior design in particular are going to be so, so critical, and sort of what people, employees, and others that are interacting in the space, what's their direct interaction. So yeah, if you know Atmosphere, you know that our big partner is Steelcase, so we're able to leverage quite a bit of their research. And so this return to work thing has been really interesting to see what research they've done, especially evidence-based, so less speculative and more like, what's the data telling us? So that's been really, really compelling. And then my background as an interior designer over the last maybe 6 or so years, and then transitioning into this role, is really about kind of, yeah, pronouncing that importance of interior design and figuring out the futurism around what's next.
So, everybody has had clients that probably were starting projects, stop projects, and they're now trying to figure out how to bring them back on board. What are you hearing from clients and from research in terms of, how do we do that? Do I need more space? Do I need less space? How do I configure the space? What are you hearing?
Yeah. So in the early days of the pandemic, and those that thought they were going to kind of trudge through and maybe not go on hold, they were starting to speculate that they would need more space. But through some of the number crunching and really thinking not just about the short term effects of COVID, but actually the long term effects, we're finding Terry and I, Terry's my corporate real estate counterpart, she's seeing that footprints are going to be about the same, because while maybe the employee individually did not have as much space for that floor plate early on, we're shifting to a place where they do have a little bit more space. It might not be a 1-to-1 ratio of everyone needing a desk, because not everyone might be in on the same day. So it's more about that really flexible, agile, easy to reconfigure sort of environment. And I think it's a lot about also like community-based environments in the workplace to offset how we've all kind of figured out how to do our thing one-on-one at home. And so, of course, people will come into the workplace to take a call, or they're in between in-person meetings and they need to hop over to talk to their dentist or grab a call with a contractor across the country. They can still pop into something like an enclave. So that's a big trend we're seeing, where there's small, almost mini private offices too, that are less owned. So I'm really seeing the shift go from mandate a little bit more to choice and control. I think the question or the point you made about employees and what they have to say about it is really, really key to all of this. I think employers have to be very careful to honor the employee well-being and experience through all of this. And that's been an interesting push and pull. It's not an easy one, I don't think.
No, I don't think so either. And you're right. It's are you hearing? I guess what I think about when I think of that, it's is giving everybody their own pace to figure it
Yeah.
out.
Absolutely. I think that that's what it comes down to. From Steelcase, one of the big pillars of what people need when they're coming back to work is choice and control. They need to feel like whether it is the choice to come into the office, the choice of where do I sit today, the choice of, what posture I can enjoy or be in, of how they come and go from the office. All of those things are um, really, really shifting where they maybe were a little bit more of like a luxury and a little bit of a here and there before the pandemic. Now it's really swinging over where that wants to be the norm to some degree. But there's a broad array of employers with different culture too. So it's kind of about right sizing per each, individual and individual company, but then the individuals within it as well.
And what are you hearing about this whole the concern that they may have about social distancing and how many times are you cleaning the office and how quickly am I going to have to really be with a large group of people because we see that happening and everybody's comfort level is different. Are employees expressing the
The
need?
frozen there, but oh, sorry. I think it might have frozen halfway through, but I think what you were asking about is sort of that experience of coming back and sort of scaling. And I think when it comes to social distancing in the office, it depends on the space, but it can be done. And I think that it's a combination of social distancing, the mask wearing, I think less on the plexiglass, more on intentional furniture settings that allow for social distancing. Like a really good example is in our Atmosphere Work Lab, we have these gorgeous large scaled sectionals. And before COVID, I would come into the work lab and think, that's pretty, but like, why? It's kind of just us showing off that we have that, less though that it's a workplace actual thing. But now being in the workplace, because I'm at home today, but I'm very hybrid. So sometimes I go in, and when we need to have a more socially distanced meeting, we can spread out on the sectional very easily out in the open without even needing to close a door for a meeting. So when we've been doing work lab tours with clients that are trying to bring their people back, we'll sit over there, talk about their goals, and it's a way for people to sort of, again, choose how comfortable are they sitting, kind of how close, how far. There's flexible furniture so that some people can move a bar stool over away or closer as they see fit. And so there's some tricks in the, furniture planning and just workplace planning so that it's not just signs everywhere that say like, don't sit here. And like, when it comes to cleaning, it's really the mindfulness. We have really adorable cleaning products throughout our whole space and like these really lovely amber bottles. And it's the little things like that that make it almost compelling to say, of course I would tidy up my workstation before I sit down, and maybe before I even sit down if you feel like you want to be extra cautious. And so I think it's pairing individuals' sense of awareness with then the encouragement and ease of accessibility to clean, tidy, maintain the space, and really feel like safety is being still prioritized, and we're not just running back in and pretending like this didn't happen.
Right. And like any big event like this, it has brought up new language. And the word, of course,
Mhm.
of the day is Resomurchal, which I don't know, they're probably gonna have to make it a real word eventually. But why don't you talk about
I'm sure.
yes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's so funny because I graduated from the U of M's interior design program back in May 2015. And I remember going to Neocon my senior year and hearing that term for the first time at the Steelcase showroom and some of the other locations as well at Neocon. And it was definitely still new, definitely still very early trendy, kind of like, people aren't really, intriguing, but people go for it. But I think that they really were ahead of the curve because Resomurchal is really about blending a residential feel, kind of like what I'm surrounded with here. So I've got my cozy living room, those touches of home, but then tailoring it to more of a commercial environment. So making sure that while it is a lovely velour sofa, it's also commercially rated, or while making sure that those adorable light fixtures that add that special ambiance, are they still UL listed? It's about pairing the residential look and feel and the character of that with the durability and the sort of certifications that we come to expect in the commercial industry for safety, welfare, and things of that nature. And I think it's even, to be honest, I think the other piece of Resomurchal that sort of where it's evolving is this mixture of hospitality in throughout it. Because I think people love hotels and destinations, and Instagram has inspired us all to make our homes more, what we want them to be, have the je ne sais quoi, the picturesque kind of moments, if you will. And so I think that it's really interesting because those hospitality touches are infusing into the home, which in turn is also cycling into this Resomurchal sort of future of workplace, which makes me really excited, honestly, for space to be a destination that's not just, a blank box where it's like you expect people to just come in and enjoy it. It's like we gotta push a little more and really prioritize interior design and interior designers.
Right. And so are you hearing this from clients? I mean, are the companies saying, oh my gosh, we really have to rethink how we have selected furniture, or what we've selected, or what we need to
Mhm.
incorporate into our space, and how we re-lay out whatever it is that we have?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say that there's certainly a spectrum. There are some of our colleagues and clients that have worked through the whole pandemic just with extra safety protocols, and maybe there was more plexiglass involved or things like that. And some of them feel like, we don't really want to change much of the way we work. We like the workstations. We like having our base, like, kind of the break rooms over here, reception is over here, keep the conference rooms like they are. We don't need a sectional. So there's going to be those people on that end. And then there's going to be the people on the way other end who are like, change everything. We want to completely evolve it. And what I'm seeing as the kind of the main piece is that people are trying to sort of figure out how much of the future to fold in, because you don't want to create a sense of shock for the people that are so used to the previous way of working. So pilot spaces are a really popular thing we're seeing clients ask for right now, just as a way to sort of, maybe they are doing a portion of the building and they've reconfigured some of their existing furniture, and then they've got this other floor, maybe a portion of a floor where they want to experiment, try out the sectional, or try out some other open, maybe collaborative or different styles of workstations. And so I'm seeing that blend happening a lot, because clients are feeling like the ones that haven't been in the office all this time are like, well, we need this time to kind of catch up on the research and the observation of how users are actually interacting with the pieces. So it's definitely a spectrum, but I think that to create a compelling workplace, what I'm hearing from many clients is just that their employees are sort of like, we coming back to the same thing, or there's sort of this expectation that like, we've been at home. What are you going to do to lure me back in? And I think some um, people will flow with like the mandate of like, oh, you told me to come back in this many days a week. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I'm in there. And then people like me who are a little more rebellious, I'm not just going in for any old reason. I really want to be compelled to go. And especially in an autonomous role like mine, and like many people have come to find their roles, I think it is like, what's that extra draw? And it's about space, it's about art, it's about beauty and an experience. It's also about the culture and the people, and both the positive things of the culture and maybe the things that we need to start to look at and pay attention to over the last couple of years.
Well, I think especially because, I'm in the art business, but we do a lot of selections all on evidence base, and just
Mhm,
all of the studies that are even coming out even more about how it really increases productivity. It
mhm,
increases the ROI. It's just, and it has high impact, because I think for a long time people thought, oh, it's a pretty picture on the wall, but no, it's a piece of the ambiance. It's a piece of what we're
mhm.
saying is important. And yes, we think you, the employee, is important. So are you
Absolutely.
here? One of the things that I'm curious about too is, are you hearing anybody, we were doing open space, open space, open space, and are we hearing
Mhm.
any more about having maybe private offices again?
It's interesting because we are working with a client right now who comes from the world of like everyone has a private office. And what was interesting was that they were telling us just last week about sort of what happened when the pandemic hit, and they did send everybody home. And there was a little part of me that wondered, if you've already got the private offices, did you have, I mean, but at the same time, we were all in this flurry of like, what is the world and everything. So like the firm I was working at was all open offices. It made a lot of sense that like we can't all be in here right now. So I think it is interesting because while they have their private offices, they're looking to make some significant changes where they're not just come in, go into a closed room where you're not interacting with any of the people from the company, because they've sort of recreated that experience at home at this point. So again, it's like you want to have those options for someone to go behind a closed door, whether they need true privacy for a sensitive conversation. Maybe they just need perceived privacy when you're just like, I don't want to feel like everyone's listening to me. So again, you want those private spaces, but I'm seeing a really big shift towards shared private spaces, whether they be shared where you can reserve and rent and book them, or shared where it's just truly open. And maybe you're either looking at the workplace sort of like we have a workplace advisor thing where you can look at the plan and sort of see where is available, and it's just based on occupancy sensors. So there's a lot of different ways that people are sort of accommodating for the fact that like you don't want to bring the employees in and say you're just all out in the open with no place to, the me within we is what we like to say at Steelcase. It's like taking care of that individual just as much as we're taking care of the full team.
Right. So, do you have any advice to clients as they try to move forward?
Yeah, I do. I have a lot of advice, but I think the first thing, the first thing that comes
Good.
to mind is to slow down and have a real conversation. I think that, it's fear is real right now with and anxiety is real around a lot of things. And I think that organizations should do what they can to zoom out for a moment. And yes, the hierarchy of companies is there to some capacity. That makes sense. But zoom out, try and connect human to human, to understand, what do your employees really need? What has this experience really been like for them? Where are they truly at? And I would just say it's really about grace for all parties. It's sort of like, let's come to the canvas fresh. We've all learned so much. Some of us, sure, we are going to still want what we had that was comfortable for us, that worked. Some of us are going to be thinking really futuristic. And I think it's sort of about, like, I like to think of it as brackets, like determining what's this bracket over here of as far towards like the norm as we want to go, and then what's the bracket over here of how futuristic we want to go. And then we really just try and work with clients to show them different furniture applications and different settings and even different architectural products that might be things that they should consider, especially for flexibility down the road. Because I think the other piece of advice I would think is don't be short-sighted. This pandemic, COVID, it was really, really hard, scary, mixed reactions all across the world. But that whole virus was about the air inside, being something that could be a problem. And we have to remember that, like, we don't know, hopefully there's not another pandemic right around the corner, but at the same time, we have to be thoughtful about like what the next thing could be. So flexibility and making sure that you don't just kind of like stick right back down into this like a new norm and think that that's permanent, because I think the biggest thing that we're learning is the constant need for change. And the way we've lived through life, like the acceleration of change is just getting faster and faster. I mean, we see it with technology. And so I think it's really about like taking that breath, trying not to be overwhelmed, leveraging resources. I love talking about this, if you can't tell, so I'm definitely down for any conversations. And I think it's just about getting back to human first, not being short-sighted, and really making sure you create a sense of variety. I mean, inclusion is one of the things we're hearing a lot right now. And part of inclusion is about having people feel like through the workplace, physically in the office, that they have a place that feels right for them. And also that they can be participatory without being in the office. So the Teams and the Zoom calls will still be important. And how do you embed a good experience from the office so that that person feels like they are engaged and seen and feeling like they're not just getting this part, but they're getting more of the peripherals. So There's so much I could say, but I hope that that helps as far as some quick.
Well, one of the things that I've heard, and we'll wrap this up shortly, but is that um, some companies are finding the hardest thing is how do you onboard new employees
Mm,
if you don't have a place where they can come. They go, who's on my team? What do they look like? One
mhm,
of the things that we've done, and we did this before the pandemic, I wonder why we were thinking this, is that we have several employee engagement walls that we have done so that people can say, oh, look, this is what's happening. This is who they are,
mhm.
and this is who I work with. And
I love that.
really that sense of belonging. But are you hearing that also? It's how am I going to onboard everybody? How am I going to integrate them so that they know our culture? Because every company has a culture, and that's really
Absolutely.
important.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a big question for folks right now. And in part, it's sort of like, how do you onboard if you don't necessarily know where we're going? So it's sort of about that determining. I think for such a long time, it was kind of like, well, we'll figure it out in the future. And now that we're kind of starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, I think it's about being transparent with folks too. Like, you know, letting them know, like, sure, like maybe the numbers of the business are feeling like this, but we also want to prioritize you all and what you do for the company. Without you, there couldn't be a company. And so it's that like kind of balancing point. And I think that sometimes even if it feels like there's nothing to tell, creating space to have the conversation is important. I've talked to some of the different designers in the industry who work at firms or they've worked with clients who are not getting any communication about what's going on right now. No surveys, no pulse checks, no curiosity or opening the conversation to say, what do our employees think? And I think that that leaves space. Sometimes no news is good news, but in that case, I think that no news kind of feels a little bit like, what's going on here? Are they thinking about us? Are they thinking about me? Like, don't, and so I think it is just transparency, being willing to have that human to human conversation, and then hooking up with the right partners and the right people with the right skill sets to kind of bring those things to the table, be a little vulnerable, share what the cultural issues are, because I think that by bringing more of the different, like, furniture expert, the interior designer and architect, art consultants, and even, the contractor and end users, bringing more of them up front to even mix mingle, get a sense to talk to each other. I feel like that is where we're really going to see this new wave of innovation, because it's not going to be the future of the workplace as like a one size fits all. It's really the curiosity and then the puzzle pieces coming together flexibly enough that they can come apart and be doing different things. And um, I think it's just going to be a very mobile future as we kind of bounce between home and the office, and within my home from room to room, and in the office from space to space. And when coffee shops open up and all the other things, it's really that, and technology becomes easier for us to take with us wherever we go. So I think it's, yeah, it's embracing that mobility. I think that scares a lot of leaders because they're like, well, how do I keep an eye on my people? And
Right.
trust is where you do that. Trust is where you have to kind of offset it and give a little more of that trust to then see the return on investment, if you will.
Mhm. Well, because I think one of the things that you said, which is is so true, is I think one of the things that we've learned is that guess what? All we're going to get is change.
Hmm.
We just don't know what it is.
Yep.
So it's like I think, and if we believe that, and we kind of like know that, then that trust becomes imperative.
Hmm.
If you don't know which day you're going to have to be more flexible and nimble and change things out.
Absolutely. And, I wanted to comment back on one of the things you brought about, which is art and the impact of that. I think that that is so often overlooked, or it's seen as like an afterthought. And it's so important to have those moments. Like, another key benchmark from Steelcase is that inspiration is a huge part of what the future of workplace needs to be. And so these employee engagement walls seem like a really compelling idea for how to help people feel connected. And I would even say, I'm like, as much as like the physical installs would be really cool, it'd be cool to see if there's like a way that the physical also leads into a digital version of that so that it's accessible.
Mhm.
But I think that that's a great idea. And that's the kind of inspiration, both in beauty and simple things and biophilia, but also in some of the art that's speaking to you, that makes you feel like I'm a part of something and we're part of this purpose.
Right. So is there anything else that you think we should briefly chat about that? I mean, I think we could go forever, but
We could definitely go forever. I think my biggest other piece is just that when it comes to looking at the office, just not being afraid to have a conversation. Like, I think sometimes, I'm new to the rep world, so I get it. I know sometimes people will come to a rep and think like, I'm worried about telling all the things or asking this question because I don't know if it's going to turn into like blah, 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 or all this other stuff. But to me, it's like leaning on that insight of the people that are talking to so many other people. And there goes Diane. Like it's so important. Just because I think it's like having the conversation earlier on might jog that aha moment. And I feel like it's sort of like we've been in this like, well, we're gotta just wait and see, wait and see, wait and see. But now that it's May and vaccinations are, going out, there's this huge shift in mindset. And we don't want to rush and say, floodgates open, everybody's back in. But there is that sense like we're already seeing a huge uptick of projects coming in. And I think it's just sort of like, even if you don't know what you want to do, having the conversation might be a helpful thing just so that way you can start to be thinking about all of the bits and pieces that go into creating that space that actually is a destination people want to be in. So there are experts that can help. And I love connecting the dots amongst Atmosphere and Steelcase and other friends in the industry like you, Shar. And I think that people just really got to lean into the conversation. I think that that's very key.
yes, I agree. It's like if we think that it isn't one size fits all, then we can have a conversation about what are the possibilities? What fits
Exactly.
for us? Do we think this is going to work? And you know what? Guess what? You might try something and it doesn't work, and then you have to be flexible enough to shift. Say,
Yep.
okay, that worked, but this part didn't. So it's a real test of how flexible and nimble we can be, and having people like you and all these people that have these vast resources behind them and research and what are we seeing elsewhere and what is working and what isn't working is invaluable. Invaluable.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like all of these conversations with end users and company leaders, it's been great to sit down and just have conversations where they literally will say like the thing I'm most worried about right now is like employee retention or how are we going to get them back or whatever. Of course, Diane has an opinion. Um but it's one of those things where just I think having that conversation, looking at how different applications can support different behaviors and culture, um, it's yeah, we got a future ahead of us. I feel optimistic, honestly, finally coming out of so much here. And I do think it's like it's a crucible moment of toughness, but it's like gonna make us better in the end. And embracing change, I think, is part of that.
Embracing change. So I have to talk to Diane for about Diane one moment. So I read this article about how many people decided they wouldn't go back to their old job if they couldn't bring their pet. Me,
Yes.
a very creative out there thinker, I have not come up with the exact solution yet, but I'm working on it.
I would love to stay tuned on this one because I have 2 cats. I'm allergic to cats. I just deal with it. I take my allergy medicine, all of that. But so I know, like, the first thing I think about is the allergies, but I'm like, there's gotta be a cat room with, like, great ventilation or something, or different cat enclaves maybe.
I go, there's got to be a solution. As you probably know, I have daughters that live in California, and they've been doing pets at work for years and years and
Really?
years. Yep.
Puppies and dogs primarily, or
Dogs or cats. And
wow.
so I go, I know it can be done. It's
Mhm.
just a matter of how would we make that happen? Or do
See,
we
that
have
sounds
doggy
like
daycare or cat daycare downtown? Or I don't
right.
know. But I think it becomes a realistic issue that we should see how we can make it work out, because
Yeah,
that's a big part, I think, of people being home and feeling comfortable. And if you have
that's
a pet,
true Resomurchal.
yes, yes.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
actually, you and I'll get this figured out, and then we'll tell the world.
Yes, we'll be back. This was such a pleasure to chat, Char. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. It's fun to hear what everybody's kind of hearing and going through. And I think more information and more conversations are the important piece of it so that everybody feels like, okay, I don't have to have the answer. I just have people I can talk to. So I can come to
Absolutely.
you and have uh, your expertise at Atmosphere being a piece of their pie.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a great presentation called Work Better that I can give. It's actually a CEU too. So if anyone ever needs that, that's a great starting place. Otherwise, general conversations, all about it.
Yeah. With a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, it works perfectly.
I love that. That's music to my ears.